Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's ShareFile webinar. We are so glad you're with us today. We have some great content to share with you, and we'll also be saving some time for your questions. So please ask your questions in the Q&A console at any time during the webinar, and we'll do our best to answer them. Taking you through some of our favorite ShareFile security features today is Kamen Nikolaev, one of our senior customer success engineers. And now I will pass it off to him.
Hello everyone, good afternoon from Dublin, Ireland. My name is Kamen Nikolaev. I'm a customer success engineer here at Citrix, and these are the top 5 features to keep you secure with ShareFile. Today on our agenda, and these are in no particular order, but first we're going to start with some authentication options using multi-factor authentication and single sign-on. We're going to take a look at the Esignature feature that allows you to send docx and PDF files for secure e-signature directly from your ShareFile account. Number 3 is going to be the reporting section of the account that will allow you to prepare some information in case of an audit or in case you need to review activity on your ShareFile account. Number 4 will be the data loss prevention integration, whereby we can actually restrict access to content, to files on your ShareFile account based on a scan from an on-prem DLP server. And then finally, we're going to look at email body encryption, and we'll give you an opportunity to ask some questions. So please go get those ready as we go along. It will be you have that opportunity near the end of the session. Okay, so for our first topic, we're going to be looking at end user authentication. Authentication, of course, is always at the forefront of any security discussion, and ShareFile has a couple of different ways to securely authenticate your end users. Ready out of the box are Citrix managed credentials, where we store your password in our control plane, our SaaS application tier. This functionality is available for your employee users, your paid license users, as well as your client or external users that may have limited capabilities in ShareFile but come at no added cost. With Citrix Managed Credentials, we offer ShareFile native MFA. A typical MFA prompt is shown here on the left. With MFA enabled, users can select between a text message, a voice call, or an authenticator app like Google Authenticator to generate that second factor. And we do have the ability to require employees and or client users to set up MFA, and we'll show how to do that in just a minute. However, if your organization has a corporate directory like Active Directory and an identity provider like Azure Active Directory, we can optionally configure SAML-based AD integration using your SAML-compliant identity provider, such as the providers listed here on the left-hand side of the screen. SAML is Security Assertion Markup Language. It's one of the industry standard protocols for integrating identity providers such as Azure Active Directory to service providers like ShareFile. With SAML integration, instead of managing your password within the Citrix Managed Control Plane, we direct users to the login page of your identity provider where you authenticate with your corporate password without it ever having gone through any kind of Citrix managed infrastructure. What happens is you authenticate with an identity provider. Once successful, we receive and validate a SAML response from the identity provider using a X509 certificate stored in ShareFile during the configuration process, making this an excellent zero trust approach to managing your users. A few things to note about SAML-based AD integration. Our officially supported identity providers are listed here. There are Citrix Gateway, Citrix Endpoint Management, Microsoft Azure AD, probably our most popular integration, and ADFS 3.0 and 4.0. That's Active Directory Federation Services. On-prem version, still very popular with our user base. And furthermore, SAML-based integration is only available for employee users of the account. Additionally, they require user synchronization from the corporate directory to the Citrix Managed Control Plane. So even though we don't manage the password, we still require the user to be created in ShareFile. To help with this, we have the user management tool, which will perform a one-way sync from Active Directory to ShareFile. It's a Windows-based application, so it'll run on Windows Server, and you can set it to run periodically, typically every day or maybe every hour. To synchronize users based on group membership, Active Directory groups, to ShareFile. And this brings us to some of the admin control options available to require MFA or SSO for your end users. If you have an identity provider configured, we do recommend requiring SSO, and this can be done in the admin settings section of the web application in the subfolder there, security, and then login and security policy. You have the option to require SSO. And with this checkbox ticked, employee users will be prompted to use SSO instead of Citrix Managed Credentials. It can optionally be limited to a specific IP range in the SSO IP range field. For example, if your identity provider is only available on the internal corporate network, but can be left blank to apply in all other cases. And really the only exception to this would be administrators, the ones who need to be able to manage, for example, the SAML configuration itself or to update a certificate. So for those users, we do allow them to access the account with Citrix managed credentials, even though SSO is required, but in all other cases, we can require SSO. And the benefit of this setting is to reduce the potential attack surface. If ShareFile native MFA is not implemented, a lost mobile phone or a compromised email account can be easily used to reset a password. So removing this option entirely is highly recommended. To quickly demonstrate the authentication flow and what your users might expect to see when these features are enabled, we're going to switch over to the web application. On this account here, I'm an employee user, but first I'm going to try to log in with Citrix managed credentials. We'll see here that SSO login is required from this IP address, so this prevents me from using this functionality. So I have to use the SAML side of the login page. If I click sign in here, I'll be passed over to the identity provider. We can see we've gone to okta.com. This is the identity provider in this case. I will provide my password here and be prompted for a second factor. Now this second factor, important to note, this is from the identity provider. This is not Citrix managed second factor. This is a conditional policy that's been applied on the identity provider and applies to myself as a user using the identity provider. ShareFile second factor authentication will not come into play here because we're using that type of integration. So now I will select on my mobile device, I will send a push notification, or accept it rather, and then be taken to the ShareFile account. On this other side, on this other account here, what we're going to do is I'm going to log in as a client user just to demonstrate the ShareFile second factor authentication, just to be able to distinguish it from the identity provider. You will see this here, native ShareFile branding. I'll select the text message. I will go to Google Voice to select the second factor when it comes in and submit. And will be authenticated into the control plane. However, if you're not using SSO, you can require MFA for client and employee users. There's a new functionality that we brought into the web application in the last about a year or so. And by default, depending on when your account provisioned and some of the actions may be taken by your master administrator, employee users are probably required at the moment to set up MFA. This would not apply to client users by default, but we do have this functionality that you can go into, again, the same section of the web application where you can select the checkbox to require client users to use MFA. And this is, again, very strongly recommended. By default, we do it for employee users, and I imagine at some point in the near future, we would probably require client users to set up an MFA as well. But you can take this action right now and require your client users to set up a second factor and use it every time they register a new device. Moving on to our next topic, feature number 2, secure e-signature. Following our acquisition of RightSignature several years ago, e-signature functionality is available directly in your ShareFile account. With this feature, you can securely send PDF and docx file formats for a signature. The feature is limited to employee users of the account that have been granted the e-signature permissions in the Manage User section of the account by a master administrator. And they can be sent to any user with an email address, which will be created in ShareFile as a client user. To initiate the e-signature workflow, you will need to upload a supported file type to the account, and this can be done in the web application or a desktop app. But to actually initiate, to request an actual signature, it will have to be done from the web application. So to do that, you just have to navigate to the folder containing the document, right-click the document, and select Send for Signature from the contextual menu. Once that is complete, you'll be taken to a preview window where you can drag and drop a signature field, text field, date field, and so forth. We even have an advanced options to use Stripe to request payment if you're a Stripe customer. We can also annotate documents in some basic way. You can add text, add check marks. You can add a static signature. In some cases as well, but for the most part, you will be just adding the signature field and the date field and place it on the document and then click send. Once that is complete, you'll be able to review the activity from within the web application, and as soon as the recipient is completely signed and completed signing the document, it will be uploaded back into the ShareFile account and then appended with --signed at the very end. It'll be in the same folder, and then appended to that document will be a signature certificate. And in this here, we'll have a checksum, a SHA-256 hash of the original document and of the signed document. So if there is any kind of tampering or anything, you know, we should be able to pick up on that. And additionally, beyond this as well, we'll have a activity log that we see here on the previous screen. A similar type of activity log will be displayed on the certificate. To quickly demonstrate adding a signature field to a document, I'm going to switch over to the web application, and I'll navigate to a folder where I know I have a PDF. Here it is. I can right-click the document and select Send for Signature. You'll notice we're passed over to writesignature.com. And when the file loads, I'll be able to click Prepare Document and select the recipient. And I'll just enter myself here and click Place Fields. Typically, you'll go probably to the bottom of the document where you could add a signature field, and you can select, you can add the signature field, resize it, add a text field, for example, if you wanted the recipient to enter their name, spell their name out legibly, and you can also add date fields and a number of other more advanced options there as well. In here, using checkbox group, initials, and so forth, you can also annotate the document. And when it's ready, you click Review, and then it'll be ready to send. You can also add a passcode if you'd like to have an additional layer of security, in which case you'd have to provide the passcode to the recipient. If you do not require that, you can just leave that off and set the expiration policy, and then click Send Document. Moving on to the next topic on our list, the reporting section of the account. So ShareFile has a series of reports that are available in the web application. They can be generated on a one-time basis or on a recurring basis, so monthly or daily, or however you'd like to configure that. The list of reports we have available would be start with the usage report. This is a very much an activity log. It would list logins, uploads, downloads, and it can be run on an account-wide basis, a folder basis, or an individual user basis. The second report is an access audit or an access report. This will list folders on the account, including the level of permission that each user has in the folder. So if you run an account-wide access audit, it'll be a snapshot of the account at the time of when the report is taken. And it will list every single folder in the account with every single user with the level of access they have in that in the folder. So this can be useful if you needed to prove for some reason in the event of an audit who had access to a particular set of data at a particular time. You could run an access audit to produce that information. Optionally, you could use a usage report to actually identify the actual uploads and downloads that have occurred on that folder. Access audit would be just the level of access, not necessarily the activity that the user has performed. The third report is a messaging report. This is just a list of every single outgoing message from the account. A storage report lists the storage, the files in the folders that you select to run the storage report on. You could run an account-wide report as well. This will list every single folder and file on your ShareFile account. And then finally, the bandwidth summary, the bandwidth detail. These are not that relevant these days. At one point, we did charge for bandwidth. We don't do that anymore, so that's not really of too much interest. But if you did have a reason to maybe take a look at why any particular user using a large amount of bandwidth, or maybe could be a red flag for somebody moving a lot of data to maybe where they shouldn't be, perhaps the bandwidth summary or the bandwidth detail would be useful. So to demonstrate the reporting capability of ShareFile, we're going to switch over to the ShareFile web application and locate the reporting section in Settings, and then Admin Settings, Company Account Info, and Reporting. So in this section here, we'll see some of the recent reports that I've run on the account, as well as you have the option of reviewing the recurring reports that are configured to run on a regular basis and then be uploaded in these kind of predefined folders here. But for demonstration purposes, we're just going to create a new report. We'll take a look at the usage report first of all. When you select usage report, you can select a date, a range to inspect, and we'll select the last month in this case, and we'll do it for the entire account instead of a user. You can also do it on a per folder basis. This is the type of activity that you would like to be captured in this report. You can uncheck any of these as you'd like. We'll just keep them standard for demo purposes, and we'll click create. This is not a very busy account, so it should take, it shouldn't take very long to generate the report. We'll open it in the embedded preview window. And you can see here, activity log, or usage report rather, is very much an activity log. It'll list the date, the item name, the activity type, the user, the email address, company and IP address, and just a rough geolocation based on the IP address that we've put together. And here you can see not too much activity on this account other than myself creating folders and so forth. But on a busy account, you'll see many other users, many other IP addresses and so forth. We'll come back to the reporting section. We'll create another report. We'll do an access audit in this case. Access audit doesn't have nearly as many configuration options as the usage report, so we'll just run on the entire account. We'll leave it not recurring, and then we'll click create. And the access audit also doesn't take too long to generate. And here we can see that the structure of this report is by folder and then by user. And here we see the level of permissions that a user can have in a folder in ShareFile. So those are upload, download, delete, manage permissions. That's admin permissions on a folder. And then notification preferences, we consider those as sort of permissions. That we see their notification preferences here as well. And then view permission as well. And so in the event of an audit, if you need to demonstrate who had access to a particular folder, you can generate an access audit and retrieve that information. Something to note, since we do not actually keep a snapshot of permissions as they change, it would be a very good idea, and one of our recommendations, to create recurring reports for the types of reports that you think you may need going forward, so that they are ready in the event of an audit or in the event of an incident that requires your attention to retrieve the type of the level of access people had in a particular folder. And so that's what I've done here, and I can actually click on this folder here to review some of the older reports that have been generated. And so, for example, if I wanted to go back, I had to go back into March of 2020 to review who had permissions to a particular folder. I would have this data here ready to go. Next on our list is number 4, data loss prevention, or DLP. Data loss prevention is an enterprise feature available for customers utilizing on-premise storage zones. It allows you to restrict access and sharing of a file based on the contents found within the file itself. So in many ways, this takes security for content collaboration networks to the next level by eliminating the guesswork on what is safe to share, by scanning each individual file uploaded to the ShareFile storage zone and blocking access, for example, if social security numbers or credit card numbers are found to be contained within the document. To support this kind of functionality, an on-premise DLP server is required. We support the following providers out of the box. We have Symantec, McAfee, WebSense, and RSA, but any ICAP compliant DLP server should be able to be configured. To illustrate how DLP works, we're taking a look at an architectural or very high-level overview of the connections, the communication flow when DLP is enabled within an environment. In this case, since DLP is only available to customer-managed on-prem storage zones, the internal network is shown on the right, containing the storage zone controllers, the storage repository used for ShareFile, and the DLP server itself. On the left is the Citrix managed control plane, containing our web servers or API servers, where we hold the file metadata in our database and so forth. But a typical upload will begin with a user authenticating with the control plane using SAML-based authentication or Citrix managed credentials, as we discussed earlier. They are then authorized to upload the document in a folder where they have the relevant permissions. But at that point, the actual file transfer will occur between the user and the storage zone controller. Optionally, you can have an ADC in the environment to improve performance and security, but it's not absolutely required. Once the upload is written to storage, it can then be sent on to the DLP server for scanning. And then the scan result is then communicated back to the storage zone controller, and from the storage zone controller back to the ShareFile control plane. And then the next time the user authenticates and goes to receive authorization to perform a download of one of these scanned documents, it will then be compared to the scan result, which will exist in our database. And then we will reject or accept those requests according to the scan result. So configuring ShareFile for data loss prevention is relatively simple. Most of the heavy lifting will be done on the actual configuration of the DLP server itself. So if you already have a DLP server configured to scan for restricted content within your environment, you would just need to enter the server URL into the ShareFile storage zone controller configuration page within your environment. This is the same location where you set the location of your backend storage repository. The ShareFile storage zone controller uses the ICAP protocol, Internet Content Adaptation Protocol, to send the document to the DLP server. ICAP is an HTTP-like protocol, so we use the format ICAP // followed by the IP address, the host name, or the FQDN of the server, and then appended by the port name and then /recmod as displayed here. With the URL configured on your storage zone controller, the last remaining step is to define the allowed actions for your employee and for your client users. A typical configuration will allow sharing and downloading of documents scanned as OK and block sharing and downloading of rejected documents, but you do have the option to customize the behavior in this section of the web application. That's under Admin Settings, Security, and then Data Loss Prevention. You will notice the unscanned documents category, and we have this here available since files first need to be written to the persistent storage repository before being scanned by the DLP server. So there could be a brief period of time where unscanned files may be available for sharing or downloading. If you would like to restrict access to these type of documents as well, you can do so here. But please note, there may be some minor usability issues if a user is expecting to be able to immediately download an uploaded file to the service. But to be fully certain restricted content is not getting out, we definitely recommend unchecking these boxes as well here for unscanned files. And you may also notice a column for anonymous downloads. Some account configurations prevent anonymous sharing entirely, and if you have this type of account, don't worry, this option will be either grayed out or unavailable if that is the case with your account. Finally, the last item on our list today is email encryption. That is email body encryption to distinguish from email attachment encryption, which ShareFile has provided for a number of years. If you're in a highly regulated profession like finance or healthcare, you may be legally obligated to encrypt communications between yourself and your customers, since regular email traffic goes over the public internet in plain text and is very widely considered to be insecure, especially when moving from domain to domain. ShareFile has offered encryption of email attachments using the Citrix Files for Outlook plugin for many years, and we have now brought that same kind of functionality to the body of the message to help our customers meet their compliance requirements. The system works effectively by keeping all communications on the Citrix managed control plane, requiring users to authenticate when accessing a message and only passing message notifications back and forth by plain text email. You can send a secure email from the web application in the inbox and then compose section of the app. Clicking edit message options here takes you to the following menu where you can set an expiration policy and your notification preferences. The best user experience, however, will be with the Citrix Files for Outlook plugin, which automatically encrypts and decrypts messages and allows you to easily switch on encryption when needed. And for more information on the Outlook plugin, we can refer you to a webinar that was held just about 2 weeks ago by my colleague Bogdan. He went into depth on the Outlook plugin and discussed how to encrypt both the email attachments and the body of the message, as well as some admin control options that may be of interest if you have any more questions about that. But feel free to ask any questions now. I think that comes to the end of our talk today, but we'll be happy to discuss any questions you may have. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much. common. Thank you all so much for your questions today. We will get right into those, but I did just want to let everyone know that yes, we are recording today, and we will be sending an email out with the recording in the next day or so. So a couple of questions came in regarding the e-signature feature. So can you just confirm if the e-signature feature is available for all ShareFile account types?
So it's not available for all account types. Yeah, I would recommend checking with your account manager. It can be purchased on a per license basis. So it should be available for most account types.
Great, thank you. And then do you need master admin access to configure and deploy the features that you reviewed, specifically the authentication feature and reporting?
You would need to be a master administrator to configure some of these. However, a master administrator can delegate those permissions. So in the manage user section of the account, there are various permissions you can grant to other employee users. And once those employee users have been granted those permissions, they can go ahead and manage those features as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. So when sending, this is a question again for e-signature. When sending something for signature from ShareFile, once the document is signed, will the newly signed document show up in ShareFile, or do you have to go into the right signature to get it?
Yes, it will. Yeah, it will be uploaded to the same folder where the original file was located, and it will be appended with a --sign at the very end of the file name. So if it was document.pdf, it'll be document-sign.pdf.
Great, thank you. This one is a specific use case for one of our customers. They say that they use Right Signature for new employee onboarding, and the several different files are sent with fillable information to the new employees for signatures. Is there a way to have this employee only have to enter their information one time and have it populate on all of the forms?
On multiple forms, yeah. If you're doing a signature, I think it will populate on multiple pages. If you're if you're using the same signature on multiple pages. But in terms of actual text box, we'll have to. I could check on that. I could provide some feedback on that.
Okay, great. So to the customer who asked that question, I just made a note, and we'll get back to you on that.
Great, thank you.
All righty. Okay. Moving on to audits and reporting, can you audit for employees who have made their work account into a client account?
Okay, so if an employee user has created a client account, and yeah, we do see this on occasion, you would just really need to review the client users list of the user account list and manage users, then browse clients. There's no way to really check if there's no really way to tie an employee user to a client user that they've created. So yeah, we just have to review that list.
Okay, thank you. And then is there a way to disable users if they haven't logged in for a set period of time? So for example, if someone has not used their ShareFile account in 6 months, can we disable that user?
There's no automated way to do that. It can be done with the API. We do have a REST API that you can create scripts against and run periodically. And we do have some sample code on our GitHub page that can retrieve client users or rather retrieve a list of users that haven't logged in a period of time. So it's not built into the product, but it can be done with some kind of advanced integrations. So possible, but not very easy, unfortunately.
Okay.
Easier way to do that actually would be to go into the web application and go into the manage users section there and select either client or employee user, and then you can sort by last login, and you could see the people that have logged in and that have never logged in, and then the people that have logged in quite some time, and you can disable them from there manually.
Okay. Would you be able to go into reporting and show what report you would recommend using for historical access information?
So for historical access, so here, if we go to browse employees, and then we can select last login, then retrieve the last logins of the user account, if that's what you mean.
I'm not sure it says the usage report, but if you don't even need to go to a report and you can just go right to browse employees, that might work as well.
Okay, yeah, for an actual employee, for a usage report on a user, we can do that as well, and then we'll be in the reporting section. And then if we wanted to we'll select usage reports, and if we wanted to narrow down to a specific user, we can just select here. Yeah, that'll generate a usage report on a specific user.
Great, thank you. And we only do have a couple minutes left. We're a little bit over time, but I'm going to ask a couple more questions real quickly, and then we'll wrap it up here. So does a client get a certificate when they complete an e-signature, or is it only get sent to the admin?
It would be uploaded back into the folder where the document was originally uploaded, but yeah, a copy will be sent to the signatory as well. Okay, so they'll get a copy of that, and it will be appended with that last page with the certificate and the audit trail.
Awesome. And then one last question that was very popular when you went over that email body encryption. Is it possible to encrypt the body of the email directly from the Outlook, the ShareFile Outlook plugin, or Citrix files for Outlook? Excuse me.
Yes, it can. Yeah, there would be an encryption on, sort of a checkbox there in the upper left-hand corner of the new message screen in Outlook. So yeah, you can do that once it's configured. You can select that, and then at that point, actually, the message will not be sent over email. It'll just be uploaded to ShareFile, and then the recipient can either look at it in the web application. But yeah, it is possible from Outlook.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Carmen, for your expertise today. And thank you all for spending time with us to learn more about ShareFile. As mentioned, we did have 3 previous webinars this month, one specific to Citrix files for Outlook, which we just talked about. And I did just drop those links to the recordings in the chat feature. So feel free right now to go ahead and copy and paste those links for yourselves if you did not receive the recordings previously after those webinars. You'll be receiving an email with the recording from today's webinar in the next day or so as well. So look out for that. And if you don't receive it, or if you have any other specific questions, feel free to send an email to that inbox where you received your confirmation for today's email. So that does wrap us up for today. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Carmen. And until next time, everyone have a great rest of your day.